The ancient oven timer let out a shrill ding that echoed through the cramped kitchen of the Evans apartment. 8-year-old Lily Evans jumped onto her tiptoes, using a dish towel as a makeshift oven mitt to carefully slide out the third batch of chocolate chip cookies. The sweet aroma of vanilla and melted chocolate fought valiantly against the perpetual smell of mildew that clung to the walls of their basement unit. "Perfect," Lily whispered to herself, her gap-toothed smile stretching wide across her freckled face. One front tooth was still growing in, giving her words a slight whistle that she'd learned to embrace. She'd learned the recipe from a tattered cookbook she'd found at the library's free book cart, practicing for weeks until she got it just right. The kitchen counter was a testament to her determination. Neat rows of cookies cooled on every available surface, on plates, on paper towels, on upturned Tupperware lids. She'd been baking since 4 a.m., her small hands working the dough with the focused intensity of a surgeon. Her mother, Sarah, wouldn't be home from her night shift at the hospital for another 2 hours, and her second job at the diner didn't start until noon. This narrow window was Lily's chance. In the living room, taped to the wall above their second-hand couch, was a photograph cut from a magazine. It showed a silver locket in the shape of a heart, the kind that opened to hold 2 pictures. Lily had been staring at that picture for 3 months, ever since she'd overheard her mother crying quietly on the phone to her grandmother. "I just wish I still had Mom's locket," Sarah had said, her voice breaking. "It's the only thing I had left of her. I can't believe I had to pawn it." Lily hadn't known what pawn meant, but she'd figured it out. Her mother had sold something precious to pay for Lily's medicine when she'd had pneumonia last winter. The locket had belonged to Lily's grandmother, who had passed away before Lily was born, and Sarah's birthday was in 1 week. The pawn shop wanted $247 to get it back. Lily had called, pretending to be an adult, her voice lowered comically. The man on the phone had laughed, but told her the price anyway. She'd done the math. If she sold each cookie for $2, she needed to sell 124 cookies. She'd baked 150, just to be safe. Now came the hard part. Lily carefully packed the cookies into plastic bags, 6 to a bag, sealed with colorful twist ties she'd saved from bread loaves. She'd made labels on the library computer during free printing hour, each one decorated with a hand-drawn smiley face. Lily's homemade cookies, $2 per bag, made with love. The wagon she pulled from the narrow storage closet was rusty and squeaked with each rotation of its wheels, but it had been her father's before he'd left. It was one of the few things he hadn't taken. Lily tried not to think about that as she loaded it with her precious cargo, along with a folding TV tray table her mother used for eating dinner while watching the news. The clock on the microwave read 6:47 a.m. She had to move now, before her mother got home and asked questions Lily didn't want to answer. She'd left a note on the fridge, "Gone to library. Be back for lunch. Love you, Lily." It wasn't exactly a lie. She'd be near the library. Sort of. The journey from their apartment complex to the edge of the Riverside Estates neighborhood took Lily 23 minutes, the wagon's squeaking wheels announcing her presence to every dog in a 3-block radius. She'd scouted this location carefully over the past week. The spot she'd chosen was technically on public sidewalk. She'd checked. Right where the wealthy neighborhood met the commercial district. A massive oak tree provided shade, and the foot traffic was steady. Joggers, dog walkers, people heading to the artisan coffee shop 2 blocks down. By 7:15 a.m., Lily had set up her station. The TV tray table wobbled slightly on the uneven concrete, but she'd fixed it with a folded piece of cardboard under one leg. She'd arranged her cookies in an attractive display, organized by type: chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, and her special recipe, snickerdoodles with extra cinnamon. She'd even made a sign on a piece of poster board: "Support a local baker. Cookies $2 per bag. All proceeds go to a good cause." Lily didn't write what the cause was. She was afraid people would feel sorry for her if they knew. She wanted them to buy the cookies because they were good, not because they pitied her. The first hour was slow. A jogger bought a bag but seemed confused about why a child was selling cookies alone. An elderly woman with a small dog gave her $5 and refused change, which made Lily want to cry with gratitude. By 8:30 a.m., she'd made $17. Only $230 to go. The sun climbed higher, and the shade from the oak tree became a blessing. Lily's optimism remained unshakable, even as more people passed without stopping. She practiced her pitch under her breath. Would you like some fresh homemade cookies? They're really good, I promise. She didn't notice the curtain twitching in the window of the large colonial house directly across the street. She didn't see the woman inside, already reaching for her phone with trembling fingers of indignation. And she certainly didn't hear, not yet, the distant rumble of 50 motorcycle engines, still 3 miles away, heading in her direction like rolling thunder across a summer sky. Brenda Miller's morning routine was sacred and precise. Wake at 6 a.m. Espresso from the $3,000 machine. Shower. Apply makeup with the precision of a battlefield general. Dress in one of 12 identical pantsuits, each pressed and hung according to the day of the week. By 7 a.m., she was at her post. The post was the bay window of her living room, which offered an unobstructed view of Riverside Estate's crown jewel, Maple Street, with its perfect lawns, its matching mailboxes, its strict HOA regulations that Brenda herself had written. As president of the Riverside Estates Homeowners Association for the past 7 years, Brenda took her responsibilities seriously. Some might say too seriously, but those people didn't understand the importance of property values. Standards. Order. She kept a leather-bound notebook on the windowsill, its pages filled with meticulous notes. June 8th. Number 47's grass exceeded 3.5 inches. Warning issued. June 12th. Number 23's garden gnome violates decorative statue size restrictions. Fine, $50. This morning, however, something was different. Something was wrong. Brenda's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her coffee cup as she spotted the anomaly at 7:43 a.m. At the very edge of her jurisdiction, technically on the public sidewalk, but spiritually an affront to everything Riverside Estates stood for, was a child. A grubby little child with a card table. Selling something. No, Brenda whispered, her voice trembling with rage. No, no, no. She grabbed her reading glasses from the side table, nearly knocking over a photograph of herself receiving the Neighborhood Watch Excellence Award, which she'd also created and awarded to herself. Through the magnified lenses, the scene became clearer and infinitely more offensive. The child appeared to be around 8 or 9, wearing a dress that looked like it came from a thrift store. Her blonde hair was pulled into pigtails that didn't quite match. And that table, good Lord, was that a TV tray? The kind people ate dinner on in the 1970s? But the worst part, the absolutely inexcusable part, was what she was selling. Cookies. Homemade cookies. In plastic bags with handwritten labels. Brenda's mind raced through the violations. Unauthorized commercial activity. Potential food safety hazard. Visual blight. Encouragement of loitering. The list went on. She reached for her phone, but paused. The child was technically on public property. The police might not respond to that. No, this required a personal touch. A direct intervention. Besides, Brenda had been looking for an opportunity to remind the other residents of Riverside Estates why the HOA rules existed. This would be an educational moment. She set down her coffee with such force that it sloshed onto her pristine white carpet. She didn't even notice. Her face was flushed, her breathing rapid. The righteousness of her cause surged through her veins like electricity. This is how it starts, she muttered, grabbing her phone and her purse. First it's one child with a card table. Then it's teenagers with lemonade stands. Before you know it, we're no better than the trailer park on Route 9. Brenda had never actually been to the trailer park on Route 9, but she'd driven past it once, and that had been quite enough. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. Perfect. Professional. Authoritative. Her highlighted hair was sprayed into submission. Her pantsuit was cream-colored, which made her look both expensive and vaguely legal. Like a lawyer or a realtor. Someone important. She practiced her speech as she slipped on her expensive flats. Young lady, I don't know who told you this was acceptable, but you are in violation of multiple city ordinances and community standards. No, too formal. The child probably wouldn't understand half those words. Little girl, you need to pack up this mess right now. Better. Direct. Clear. Brenda opened her front door and stepped into the morning heat. It was already 82 degrees, and the humidity made her pantsuit feel like a sauna. But she would not be deterred. Standards must be maintained. As she marched across her perfectly manicured lawn, exactly 2.8 inches of Kentucky bluegrass, measured weekly, she noticed Mrs. Patterson from number 34 watching from her window. Good. Let her watch. Let everyone see what happened when people tried to undermine the neighborhood's carefully maintained image. Brenda's heels clicked against the sidewalk as she approached the child's setup. She'd planned her angle of approach carefully, coming from the west, where the morning sun would be at her back, giving her a natural advantage. Intimidation was about psychology. The closer she got, the more violations she spotted. The table was clearly unstable, a safety hazard. The cookies weren't professionally wrapped, a health code violation. The child herself looked too young to be unsupervised, possibly child labor laws being broken. Brenda's internal prosecutor was building an airtight case. She was so focused on the child and her ramshackle setup that she completely failed to notice the unusual quiet that had fallen over the street. She didn't hear the rumbling that had just stopped. She didn't see the long shadows falling across the pavement behind her, cast by figures she'd dismissed as irrelevant to her mission. In Brenda's world, there was only her righteousness, the violation before her, and the satisfaction she would feel in correcting it. She had no idea she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. Jackson Bear Tate had been riding since before most people in this town were born. At 52, he'd covered more miles on two wheels than most people covered in cars in a lifetime. The road was his church, the engine his prayer, and the brotherhood of the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club his family. This morning's ride was supposed to be simple, peaceful even. 23 members of the club, plus 27 from their allied chapters across the state, coming together for their annual summer run. They'd started at dawn from the clubhouse, planning to ride 200 miles to the coast, spend the night, and ride back tomorrow. No drama, no trouble, just the wind, the road, and the brothers. Bear led the formation on his 1996 Harley-Davidson Fat Boy, a beast of chrome and black metal that had been with him longer than any human relationship. Behind him, the club rode in a perfect V formation, Viper on his right, Road Rash on his left, then the others spreading out in precise intervals that had been drilled into them over years of riding together. The Iron Saints weren't what people imagined when they heard motorcycle club. Sure, they looked the part, leather vests covered in patches, boots that could kick through a door, arms decorated with enough ink to fill a library. But they were legitimate. They ran charity toy drives, escorted funeral processions, protected abuse victims who needed to relocate safely. The skull and crossbones on their patches was a symbol of brotherhood, not criminality. Still, Bear knew what they looked like. Knew that mothers pulled their children closer when the club rolled through town. Knew that business owners sometimes locked their doors until the rumble of engines faded. It used to bother him. Now, at 52, with more scars than he could count and a heart that had been broken and rebuilt more times than his bike, he didn't give a damn what people thought. He cared about his brothers. He cared about doing right. Everything else was noise. The formation thundered down Highway 47, engines synchronized in a sound that was part music, part declaration of existence. The heat was building. It was going to be a scorcher, but Bear loved riding in weather that made other people hide in air conditioning. Made him feel alive. Viper pulled up beside him at a stoplight, his lean face hidden behind sunglasses that probably cost more than some people's monthly rent. Viper was the club's VP and its unofficial tech guy, always carrying at least 2 cameras and enough gadgets to fill a Best Buy. Getting hot, brother, Viper shouted over the engine noise. Gonna need water soon. Bear nodded. He'd been thinking the same thing. His throat was dry, and he could see some of the younger members fidgeting in the heat. They were about 30 miles from their first plant stop, but maybe, that's when he smelled it. Bear had a nose like a bloodhound when it came to food. Working in his cousin's bakery as a teenager had given him an appreciation for good baking that decades of roadside diners hadn't diminished. And what he smelled now, cutting through the scent of hot asphalt and motorcycle exhaust, was the unmistakable aroma of fresh-baked cookies. Not just any cookies. Good cookies. The kind made with real butter, real vanilla, real chocolate chips. His stomach growled loud enough that he heard it over his engine. Bear raised his left hand, making the signal, stop ahead. Unplanned. The formation responded instantly. 50 engines began to decelerate in perfect unison, a wave of coordinated motion that would have made a military drill sergeant weep with pride. They rolled into Riverside Estates at exactly 8:47 a.m., following their noses like bloodhounds after a scent. The neighborhood was clearly wealthy, the kind of place where their presence would normally inspire panic. But they weren't here to cause trouble. They were here to buy cookies. Bear spotted the source, a small card table under an oak tree, with a tiny blonde girl manning what appeared to be a cookie operation. His heart softened immediately. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile that reminded him of his niece. "Look at that," Road Rash said, pulling up alongside Bear. "Little entrepreneur." "Dibs on first purchase," Bear announced, his deep voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. 50 motorcycles began to find parking spots along the street. The sound was apocalyptic, a thunder of engines that echoed off the nice suburban houses like the herald of Valhalla. But Bear noticed something that made his protective instincts flare. The little girl looked terrified. He killed his engine and dismounted, his 6 feet 5 inches frame unfolding from the bike, like a grizzly emerging from a cave. He could see the exact moment the kid decided to run. Her eyes went wide. Her hands gripped the edge of her wobbly table. "Easy there, sweetheart," Bear called out, raising his hands in a gesture of peace as he walked toward her. "Just came to buy some cookies." "Smell them from a mile away." Behind him, the rest of the club was dismounting in a choreographed silence that was somehow more impressive than their earlier rumble. They knew the drill. When Bear was negotiating, they watched his back, but kept their distance. Up close, the little girl was even more endearing. Her dress was clean but old, her shoes had been resoled at least once, and her homemade sign was written in the careful block letters of a child trying very, very hard to be professional. Are you really going to buy cookies?" she asked, her voice small but brave. "Absolutely," Bear said, pulling out his wallet. "What flavors you got?" "Chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, and snickerdoodle," Lily recited, her confidence growing. $2 a bag, 6 cookies each." "Give me 2 bags of each," Bear said. "And make it quick. I've got 49 hungry brothers behind me who are about to form a line." The little girl's face transformed. Fear melted into pure joy. Really, Bear confirmed. He glanced back at his club. "Single file, brothers. Don't crowd the lady. She's running a business here." What happened next was something beautiful. 50 of the roughest-looking men in the state formed a line as orderly as kindergartners at recess, waiting patiently under the hot sun for their turn to buy overpriced cookies from a little girl who clearly needed the money. Bear handed her a 20 for his $12 purchase and told her to keep the change. The smile she gave him was worth more than gold. He was biting into his first chocolate chip cookie, and it was damn good, better than good, when he heard the screaming. Lily thought she might be dreaming. Or dead. Possibly both. One moment, she'd been alone with her dwindling hope and her growing worry that she might not sell enough cookies. The next moment, the world had exploded into noise, a sound so deep and loud it seemed to come from the earth itself. Then she'd seen them. Motorcycles. Dozens of them. Big, shiny, terrifying machines ridden by men who looked like they'd walked out of every stranger danger video she'd ever been shown at school. Tattoos everywhere. Leather and chains. Beards that could hide small animals. One man had a scar across his face that looked like it came from a knife fight. Her first instinct was to run. Just grab the wagon and sprint back to the apartment as fast as her skinny legs could carry her. But then the biggest man she'd ever seen had climbed off his motorcycle and walked toward her, and something in his eyes had stopped her fear cold. They were kind eyes. Sad eyes. Eyes that looked like they'd seen too much, but still chose to be gentle. "Just came to buy some cookies," he'd said, and Lily had felt the knot in her stomach loosen just a little. Now, 10 minutes later, she was living in a different reality altogether. The big man, he'd said his name was Bear, which fit him perfectly, had bought 6 bags. 6. That was $12 right there, and he'd given her $20 and refused change. Then, impossibly, all of his friends had lined up behind him. The line stretched down the sidewalk, around the corner, and out of sight. 50 men, all waiting patiently for their turn to buy her cookies. "What you got left, Cookie Queen?" asked the man who was second in line. He was skinnier than Bear, with sharp features and sunglasses that looked expensive. 3 different cameras hung from straps around his neck. I have 20 bags of chocolate chip, 15 oatmeal raisin, and 12 snickerdoodle," Lily recited, her merchant's inventory suddenly committed to memory. "Give me 3 bags of chocolate chip," the man said. He pulled out a $10 bill. "Keep the change. That's for being brave enough to start your own business." Thank you, mister, Lily whispered. Name's Viper. And you're welcome, kid. The man behind Viper was built like a professional wrestler, with arms so thick with muscle that his t-shirt sleeves looked painted on. He had a spider web tattooed on his elbow and the word Mama in Gothic letters across his knuckles. What's your name, little miss? He asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. Lily. Lily Evans. Pretty name. I'm Road Rash. Can't decide between flavors. Give me one of each. More money. More smiles. More impossibly kind words from men who looked like they should be terrifying. The fourth customer asked if she'd made the cookies herself. When Lily said yes, he insisted on buying 5 bags and handed her $20. By the 10th customer, Lily had developed a rhythm. Take order. Count cookies. Make change, though most people told her to keep it. Say thank you. Repeat. Her notebook, where she'd planned to track sales, was forgotten. Math had become irrelevant. She was simply trying to keep up. These are actually really good, Bear announced to the line, holding up a half-eaten cookie. Kids got talent. A cheer went up from the assembled bikers, and Lily felt her cheeks burn with pride. One of the younger guys, who couldn't have been older than 25, squatted down to her eye level. My little sister sells Girl Scout cookies every year. You're doing better than she does, and she's got the whole organization behind her. You're doing this solo. That's impressive. I'm saving up for something important, Lily said before she could stop herself. Yeah? What's that? Lily hesitated. She didn't want to tell the whole story, didn't want them to feel sorry for her. But there was something about these men, despite their scary appearance, that made her feel safe. My mom's birthday is next week. I want to buy her something special. The young guy's expression softened even more. That's real sweet, kid. He pulled out his wallet and handed her a 20. Give me 1 bag. Keep the rest. But that's too much. Nope. That's exactly right. Behind him, she heard murmuring approval from the others in line. Several more people started pulling out 20s. Lily's hands trembled as she packed cookies. At this rate, she might actually do it. She might actually earn enough to get her mom's locket back. The sun climbed higher. The shade from the oak tree became precious real estate, and the bikers rotated positions so that Lily always had coverage while they took turns standing in the heat. Someone, she didn't see who, had placed a bottle of cold water on her table. Drink that, Bear ordered gently. Can't have our supplier passing out. Lily obeyed, and the cold water was the best thing she'd ever tasted. She was counting out change for customer number 17 when she heard the new voice. It was shrill and angry, cutting through the low rumble of biker conversation like a knife through butter. What is going on here? Lily looked up and felt her heart sink. It was the woman from the big house across the street. The one who'd yelled at Mrs. Patterson last week for having the wrong color mailbox. The one all the neighborhood kids called the mean lady. And she was storming toward Lily's table like a missile locked onto its target. Brenda had been watching from her window for 15 minutes, and with each passing second, her blood pressure climbed higher. What she was witnessing was even worse than she'd initially thought. The child wasn't just running an illegal cookie stand. She was attracting a crowd. A crowd of, Brenda's mind struggled to find a word judgmental enough, those people. Motorcycles, leather, tattoos, everything that was wrong with society, congregated on her street, at the border of her neighborhood, making a mockery of every standard Brenda held dear. She'd called the police 3 times. The first time, they'd said they'd send someone when they could. The second time, they'd asked if there was an actual crime being committed. The third time, the dispatcher had sounded annoyed and said, "Ma'am, a child selling cookies is not a police emergency." Fine. If the authorities wouldn't handle it, Brenda would. She'd spent the past 15 minutes psyching herself up, pacing her living room, building her righteous anger to the point where it overrode her natural caution. Yes, there were a lot of those motorcycle people. Yes, they looked dangerous. But they were just people. And people responded to authority, especially when that authority was backed by the law. Brenda had the law on her side. Sort of. Probably. Well, she had regulations. Community standards. The moral high ground. That had to count for something. She marched across her lawn with her phone in one hand and her purse in the other, prepared to document everything for the lawsuit she was already mentally filing. This would be her greatest triumph as HOA president. The day she single-handedly saved Riverside Estates from declining into chaos. In her tunnel vision focus on the card table and the child, Brenda completely failed to notice that the crowd, she'd seen from her window was actually an organized line. She didn't register that the motorcycles were parked legally, carefully positioned to avoid blocking driveways or fire hydrants. She didn't observe that the men were behaving with perfect politeness, speaking in low voices, respecting personal space. She saw what she expected to see: chaos, disruption, decay. "What is going on here?" she shrieked as she approached, her voice hitting a pitch that made several birds vacate the oak tree. The little girl looked up, and Brenda felt a brief flicker of satisfaction at the fear in the child's eyes. Good. Fear meant compliance. "Ma'am, I'm just selling cook," the girl began. "I can see what you're doing," Brenda snapped. "What I want to know is who gave you permission to set up this blight on our community." "It's a public sidewalk," the girl said quietly. "I checked." "Oh, you checked?" Brenda's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Well, I'm sure your extensive legal research is much more thorough than the city codes I've been enforcing for 7 years. Brenda was vaguely aware of movement around her, people shifting, the crowd seeming larger somehow, but she ignored it. She was on a roll. "Do you have a business license? Food handler's permit? Liability insurance?" Brenda fired off questions like bullets. "Have these products been inspected by the health department? Do you have permission from your parents to be operating a commercial enterprise as a minor?" The little girl's eyes were filling with tears, and Brenda felt a savage satisfaction. This was what justice looked like. This was order being restored. I just wanted to help my mom," the girl whispered. "Oh, spare me the sob story," Brenda snapped. "Every rule breaker has an excuse. If I let one person break the rules, soon everyone will want to. That's how neighborhoods fall apart. That's how property values plummet." Brenda stepped closer to the table, her anger reaching its crescendo. The wobbly card table, the handwritten signs, the cheap plastic bags, everything about this setup represented chaos and poverty creeping into her ordered world. "You have exactly 30 seconds to pack up this disaster and leave, or I'm calling the police," Brenda declared. "And I'll be speaking to your parents about proper supervision of minors." "Please," the little girl said, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "I only need to sell a little bit more. Please don't." 20 seconds, Brenda interrupted. She didn't hear the low growl that had started building behind her. She didn't notice that the casual conversations had stopped. She didn't register the wall of leather and muscle that had positioned itself between her and escape. She was too focused on her victory. 10 seconds, Brenda announced. "And frankly, I don't understand why you're still standing there. These cookies are probably a health hazard anyway. When was the last time you washed your hands? Do you have any idea how many bacteria are probably—" Something inside Brenda snapped. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the sight of the little girl's tears, which felt like defiance rather than surrender. Maybe it was simply 7 years of enforcing rules finally finding their ultimate expression. She lunged forward and kicked the table. The action was so sudden, so violent, that even Brenda was surprised by herself. The wobbly TV tray table didn't stand a chance. It flipped over entirely, sending bags of cookies flying through the air like confetti. They hit the concrete and exploded, showering the sidewalk with cookie shards. Brenda wasn't done. She stepped forward and deliberately stomped on the largest intact bag, grinding it into the pavement with her expensive flats. The crackling sound of cookies being crushed was immensely satisfying. "That is what I think of your little business," Brenda declared, breathing hard, her face flushed with exertion and triumph. The little girl was sobbing now, staring at the destroyed cookies with an expression of such profound devastation that Brenda felt nothing. Rules were rules. Order had been restored. Brenda turned around, ready to deliver her closing speech to whatever crowd had gathered, ready to explain to these motorcycle people that this was what happened when you tried to circumvent community standards. The words died in her throat. Time seemed to slow down as Brenda's brain finally processed what her eyes were seeing. There weren't just a few motorcycle people. There were dozens. No, more than dozens. The line she hadn't noticed stretched impossibly long, and every single person in it was staring at her with expressions that ranged from shock to barely contained fury. But it was the man directly in front of her who made Brenda's blood turn to ice. He was massive. Not just tall, but massive, like a Viking who'd been carved from granite and covered in leather. His arms were crossed over his chest, revealing forearms decorated with elaborate tattoos that probably had violent meanings. His face was hidden behind a thick beard, but his eyes were the most terrifying thing Brenda had ever seen. They weren't angry in the hot, explosive way. They were cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who was deciding exactly what kind of justice you deserved. In his right hand, held delicately between fingers the size of sausages, was half of a chocolate chip cookie. Clearly, he'd been in the middle of eating it when Brenda had kicked over the table. The silence that followed was absolute. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the birds seemed to have fled the area. Brenda's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Her brain, which had been so confident 30 seconds ago, was now desperately trying to rewrite recent history. Surely she hadn't just kicked over a table in front of 50 motorcycle gang members. Surely she hadn't just made a little girl cry in front of men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. Surely she hadn't just crushed the cookies of a customer who looked like he could bench press her house. The big man took a single step forward. Brenda took 3 steps back. The world had gone silent except for the sound of Lily's sobbing. Bear stood absolutely still, using every ounce of self-control he'd learned in 52 years of life not to lose his composure. Behind him, he could sense the Iron Saints vibrating with barely contained rage. These were men who'd seen combat, who'd lost brothers, who'd stared down rival clubs and dirty cops, and every form of injustice the world could throw at them. But the sight of a grown woman making a little girl cry over cookies had touched something primal in every single one of them. Viper had his phone out. Bear noticed from the corner of his eye. Good. They'd need documentation. This wasn't going to be handled with fists. Bear had left that part of his life behind years ago, but it was going to be handled. The woman who'd kicked the table was breathing hard, her face flushed red, her eyes wide as she finally, seemed to realize she'd made a catastrophic error in judgment. Bear let the silence stretch. He'd learned a long time ago that silence was often more effective than shouting. Let people fill the quiet with their own fear. Let them imagine what might happen next. He took another bite of his cookie, chewing slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact with the woman. Road Rash moved to the side, kneeling down to help Lily pick up the scattered bags. Several other club members joined him, their massive hands surprisingly gentle as they gathered the cookie carnage. So, Bear finally said, his voice low and controlled, "You kicked over my lunch." The woman's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I didn't. There's rules, she can't." The woman stammered. "I paid for those cookies," Bear continued, gesturing to the destroyed bags. "Cash money. Legitimate transaction. And you destroyed my property." Your property?" The woman's voice was shrill with panic. "This is about an illegal business operation. She doesn't have permits." The health code, Viper interrupted, his voice sharp as broken glass, "doesn't apply to home-baked goods sold in quantities under $1,000 annual revenue in this state. I checked while I was standing in line. Spent 20 minutes reading the statute. So maybe you should have done your research before you assaulted a child and destroyed customer property." The woman's face went from red to white. I didn't assault anyone. You kicked a table in the direction of a minor, causing her emotional distress and financial loss." Viper continued, now holding up his phone to show he was recording. "You then deliberately destroyed merchandise that had been purchased by multiple customers. All of this is on video, by the way. Multiple angles. 4K resolution. Time-stamped. With GPS coordinates." The woman looked around wildly, as if searching for support, for someone to validate her actions. Instead, she found herself surrounded by a semicircle of leather-clad men, every single one of them looking at her like she was something they'd scraped off their boots. "This is harassment," the woman tried. "I'm calling the police." "Please do," Bear said calmly. "I'd love to file a report about you destroying my meal and traumatizing a child." Behind Bear, someone had pulled out a first aid kit and was offering Lily a tissue for her tears. The little girl was still crying, staring at her destroyed cookies with the kind of heartbreak that suggested this was about more than just money. That's when Bear's anger finally broke through his control, just a little bit. "How much were you trying to raise, sweetheart?" he asked Lily gently, ignoring the woman entirely. $247, Lily whispered through her tears. "I was trying to get my mom's locket back from the pawn shop for her birthday. My grandma's locket. It was all she had left of her mom. and she had to sell it to pay for my medicine, and I just want it. She couldn't finish. The sobs took over. Something shifted in the air. Bear heard it behind him. The collective drawing in of breath from 50 men who'd just heard a child's pure-hearted motivation destroyed by petty cruelty. The woman seemed to sense she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Look, I didn't know, but that doesn't change the fact that there are rules, property values. The neighborhood, Bear said, his voice now carrying an edge of steel. Just watched you bully a little girl who was trying to do something beautiful for her mother. How do you think that affects property values? Viper was still recording. Road Rash had his phone out too, Bear noticed. So did at least 5 other club members. This woman's actions were being documented from every conceivable angle. I want you to pick up every single broken cookie, Bear said quietly. I want you to put them in a bag. And then I want you to stand right there. He pointed to a spot directly under the hot sun, away from the shade. Until the police arrive. Which they will. Because I'm calling them now. You can't tell me what to do, the woman sputtered. You're right, Bear acknowledged. I can't. But I can tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to file assault charges for destroying my purchased property. I'm going to file harassment charges for your treatment of this child. And I'm going to make sure that everyone in this neighborhood, hell, everyone in this city, sees the video of what you did today. Bear pulled out his own phone, scrolling through his contacts. I've got friends at every news station in the state. Local interest story. Local woman destroys child's cookie stand while child tries to buy back deceased grandmother's locket for cancer survivor mother. My mom doesn't have cancer, Lily protested. She's not a cancer survivor? Bear asked. Well, no, but... Details, Bear said, winking at Lily to let her know he was exaggerating for effect. To the woman, he continued. The point is, by tonight, your face is going to be all over social media. By tomorrow, you'll be the most hated person in the Tri-County area. And that's not a threat. That's just statistics. People love feel-good stories. They especially love feel-good stories with clearly defined villains. The woman's face had gone beyond white into a grayish-green color. You can't. I have rights. So did that little girl, Viper said coldly. But you didn't care about her rights when you were stomping on her cookies, did you? That's when they heard the sirens. Officer David Miller had been on the force for 12 years, and in that time, he developed a keen sense for when a call was going to be annoying versus when it was going to be interesting. The dispatcher's voice had suggested this one was going to be annoying. Possible disturbance at the corner of Maple and Oak in Riverside Estates. Caller reports motorcycle gang harassing residents and illegal business operations. Miller knew Riverside Estates. More importantly, he knew the kind of people who lived there. The kind who called the police because their neighbor's lawn was 2 inches too tall, or because someone parked a pickup truck on the street overnight. He also knew motorcycle clubs. He rode a Yamaha himself on his days off, and while he wasn't part of any club, he knew the difference between outlaw MCs and legitimate riding clubs. Most of them were just guys who liked bikes and brotherhood. Still, a call was a call. When he pulled up to the scene, he spent a full 30 seconds in his patrol car, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. There were indeed motorcycles. A lot of them. All parked legally, he noted. All Harleys, mostly from the same era, suggesting this was an organized ride rather than random troublemakers. There was a crowd of bikers, maybe 50 of them, arranged in what appeared to be a line. They were standing in line like they were waiting for concert tickets. There was a little girl with a cookie stand. Well, what used to be a cookie stand. The table was on its side, and there were cookie fragments everywhere. And there was Brenda Miller. Officer Miller sighed deeply. Of course it was Brenda. Not a relative. Thank God. But he knew her reputation. She'd called the police 17 times in the past year alone, every call more petty than the last. As he exited his vehicle, he could see Brenda's face light up with relief and vindication. Officer. Thank God. She rushed toward him. These men are harassing me. They're threatening me. And this child is running an illegal operation. Ma'am, Miller held up his hand. Let me assess the situation first. He walked past Brenda toward the actual scene of whatever had occurred. The bikers parted to let him through, all of them maintaining careful distance. Miller noticed they all had their hands visible, relaxed body language. No one was being threatening. Then he saw the little girl. She was maybe 8, red-eyed from crying, holding a plastic bag full of broken cookies like it was the most precious thing in the world. A massive, bearded biker. Had to be 6 feet 5 inches, easy, was crouched down next to her, speaking to her in a gentle voice that didn't match his appearance at all. It's okay, sweetheart. The officer's going to sort this out. Nobody did anything wrong except that lady. Miller approached carefully. Afternoon. I'm Officer Miller. Can someone tell me what happened here? At least 6 bikers started talking at once. Miller held up his hand again. How about you? He pointed to the big guy. You seem to be in charge. Jackson Tate, the man said, standing to his full impressive height. President of Iron Saints MC. We're a registered nonprofit, officer. Happy to provide documentation. Miller's eyebrows rose. A nonprofit MC? That was unusual. Okay, Mr. Tate. What happened? Simple story, Bear said. We were on our annual charity ride. Stopped to buy cookies from this young lady here. Legitimate transaction, cash paid. We were waiting in line when that woman, he pointed to Brenda, came over, verbally harassed the child, kicked over her table, and deliberately destroyed merchandise that multiple customers had already purchased. That's not, Brenda started. Ma'am, please, Miller said. I'll get your statement in a moment. A skinnier biker stepped forward. Officer, I have video. Multiple angles. Time-stamped. Would you like to see it? Miller's day just got more interesting. Yes, please. What Miller watched over the next 3 minutes made his jaw clench tighter and tighter. The video was crystal clear. Brenda approaching, Brenda yelling at a child, Brenda kicking the table, Brenda stomping on cookies while a little girl sobbed. What really got him was the audio. The little girl's explanation about saving for her mother's locket. Brenda's dismissive cruelty. The biker's remarkable restraint in the face of what had to be massive provocation. I'll need a copy of that, Miller said quietly. Already emailed to your department's general tip line, Viper said. Time-stamped 9:47 a.m. Also uploaded to cloud storage with metadata intact. Miller looked at the biker with new respect. You guys lawyers or something? Some of us, Viper said. Some of us just know our rights. And we know how to document when they're violated. Miller turned to Brenda. Ma'am, would you like to explain your actions? I was enforcing community standards. Brenda sputtered. This child doesn't have a business license, food permits, proper supervision. Home-baked goods under $1,000 annual revenue are exempt from commercial licensing in this state, Miller said. He'd dealt with enough lemonade stand complaints to know the law by heart. As for supervision, is your mother nearby, honey? She's at work, Lily said quietly. She doesn't know I'm here. I'm supposed to be at the library. Not ideal, Miller thought, but not illegal either. How old are you? 8. Old enough to be unsupervised for short periods, Miller confirmed. Unless there's a specific ordinance in Riverside Estates. There is, Brenda said triumphantly. No commercial activity without proper permits. This isn't Riverside Estates, Miller interrupted. This is a public sidewalk. Your HOA rules don't apply to public property, ma'am. You know that. Brenda's face cycled through several colors. Furthermore, Miller continued, I've just watched video evidence of you destroying private property, multiple customers purchased goods, and causing emotional distress to a minor. These gentlemen would be well within their rights to press charges. Press charges? Brenda shrieked. I'm the victim here. Really? Miller's voice was cold. Because from where I'm standing, the only victim I see is a little girl who was trying to do something nice for her mother. He turned to Bear. Mr. Tate, do you wish to press charges for destruction of property? Bear looked down at Lily, then back at Brenda. Miller could see the calculation happening behind those hard eyes. Finally, Bear shook his head. No charges. But I want it on record. And I want her, he pointed at Brenda, to stay at least 50 feet away from this child and her business operation. Agreed, Miller said. He looked at Brenda. Ma'am, I'm issuing you an official warning for harassment and destruction of property. If these gentlemen change their minds, they have 6 months to file charges. I strongly suggest you go back to your house and stay there. This is outrageous. I'm calling my lawyer. You're welcome to do that, Miller said. But I should mention that I'm also filing a report that will be public record. And based on this video evidence, any lawyer is going to tell you the same thing I am. You screwed up. Badly. Your best bet is to apologize and disappear. Brenda looked around at the circle of bikers, all of them still watching her with varying degrees of contempt. She looked at Officer Miller, who was clearly not on her side. She looked at her destroyed reputation, scattered on the pavement along with the cookie crumbs. "This isn't over," she said, her voice shaking. But it was the voice of someone who knew it absolutely was over. She turned and fled toward her house, her expensive flats clicking against the pavement. Officer Miller watched her go, then turned back to the bikers. "For what it's worth, you guys handled that better than most would have." "We're not most," Bear said simply. Miller looked at Lily. "Kid, you're not in trouble. But maybe next time, tell your mom where you're going, okay?" Lily nodded, still clutching her bag of broken cookies. "Now," Bear said, his voice returning to that surprising gentleness, "let's talk about fixing this situation." After Officer Miller left, with a knowing wink that suggested he'd be buying cookies himself if any were left, Bear surveyed the damage. The table was scratched, but salvageable. Most of the cookies were destroyed, ground into the concrete in a way that made his blood boil every time he looked at it. But Lily was safe. That was what mattered. "All right, brothers," Bear announced, his voice carrying down the line. "Time to rebuild." What happened next was a lesson in organized chaos that would have impressed a military logistics coordinator. Road Rash disappeared and returned 5 minutes later with a folding table from his bike saddlebag. Always keep one for roadside repairs. That was actually stable and professional looking. Viper produced a tablecloth from somewhere. "My girlfriend makes me carry emergency supplies," he explained sheepishly. "Never know when you might need to make something look nice." 3 other club members went into the expensive coffee shop 2 blocks down and returned with a case of bottled water, a box of wet wipes for the customer's hands, one explained, and a commercial-quality cash box that the shop owner had donated after hearing what happened. "Tell the little girl she's welcome anytime," the barista had said. "And tell that awful woman she's banned for life." Within 15 minutes, Lily's cookie operation had been transformed from a wobbly card table to something that looked almost professional. The new table was sturdy. The tablecloth was clean and white. Someone had even made a new sign using poster board from a nearby drugstore. "Lily's Cookies. All proceeds go to Family Locket Recovery Fund." Bear stood back to admire their work, but his satisfaction was tempered by reality. "How many cookies do we have left, sweetheart?" Lily counted carefully. 23 bags that aren't broken. Some of them got squished, but they're still sealed. 23 bags at $2 each was $46, plus what she'd already made before Brenda's attack. Bear watched as Lily counted her cash box with trembling fingers. $134, she whispered. "I made $134. Her face crumpled. "But I need 247. And I don't have any more ingredients to make cookies. I spent all my money on butter and chocolate chips." The little girl's devastation was palpable. She'd been so close. Bear felt something twist in his chest. He looked back at his brothers, saw his own thoughts reflected in their faces. They could just give her the money. Easy. Problem solved. But he'd been a kid once. He knew the difference between earning something and being given charity. Lily needed to feel like she'd done this herself, or the victory would be hollow. "Viper," Bear said quietly. "Still got those cameras rolling?" 3 different angles, boss. "Good. I've got an idea." Bear knelt down next to Lily, bringing his enormous frame down to her eye level. "Lily, honey, I need to ask you something important. Would it be okay if we helped you sell the rest of your cookies? Maybe made this into a bigger thing." Lily wiped her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Well," Bear said, a smile creeping across his bearded face, "I'm thinking we turn this into an event. Get the word out. See how many people we can bring here in the next few hours. But I need your permission, because it's your business." "But there's only 23 bags left," Lily said. "Leave that part to me," Bear said. He stood up and turned to the club. "Who here knows how to bake?" 5 hands went up hesitantly. "Perfect. Tiny, Thunder, Brooklyn, you 3 go to the grocery store. Get ingredients for." Bear did quick mental math. At least 300 more cookies. Premium ingredients. Real butter, good chocolate. Put it on the club card. "This is an official Iron Saints charity project now." "On it, boss," said a man nicknamed Tiny who was anything but tiny. Bear turned to Viper. "Post that video. All of it. Tell the story. Make it viral." "Where should I post it?" "Everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Tag every local news outlet. Tag every feel-good story account. Make this the most heartwarming and infuriating story on the internet today." Viper's grin was predatory. "This is going to destroy that woman." That woman destroyed herself, Bear corrected. We're just documenting facts. He turned to the rest of the club. The rest of you split up. Half stay here to maintain presence and protect our client. He gestured to Lily. The other half, canvass the neighborhood. Tell everyone what happened. Tell them there's a little girl selling cookies to buy back her grandmother's locket, and we're helping her make it happen. Road Rash raised his hand. Boss, the coffee shop owner said we could use their kitchen if we needed. They've got industrial ovens. Bear's smile widened. Perfect. Tiny, change of plans. Get the ingredients, then set up a baking operation at the coffee shop. We're going to have the best damn cookies this city has ever seen. The club members scattered with military precision. Within minutes, Operation Cookie Recovery was in full effect. Bear stayed with Lily, helping her organize the remaining bags, straightening the tablecloth, making sure she had water to drink. Mr. Bear, Lily said quietly. Just Bear is fine, sweetheart. Why are you doing all this? You don't even know me. Bear was quiet for a moment, looking at this small, brave child who'd tried so hard to do something good. When I was about your age, he said finally, my dad left. Just walked out one day. My mom worked 3 jobs trying to keep us fed. One day, I tried to sell newspapers door to door to help out. Got about $5 before a cop told me I couldn't do that without a permit. He smiled at the memory, though it still hurt a little. I went home crying. Felt like I'd failed her. Like I was useless. And you know what killed me? I knew she was struggling, and I couldn't do anything about it. What happened? Lily asked. A biker club happened, Bear said. Different club, different city. They were riding through, saw me crying. Asked what was wrong. When I told them, they didn't just give me money. They helped me find legal ways to help my mom. Taught me about yard work, car washing, legitimate jobs a kid could do. Helped me make enough to buy her a birthday present that year. He looked at Lily. They taught me that sometimes, when you can't fight your own battles, someone bigger has to step in. And when you get big enough, it's your job to step in for someone else. That's what this patch means. He touched the skull emblem on his vest. Brotherhood. Protection. Standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. Lily's eyes were welling up again, but this time not from sadness. Plus, Bear added, lightening the mood. That lady kicked my cookies. Nobody kicks my cookies. Lily giggled through her tears. By noon, the transformation was complete. The Iron Saints had turned Lily's modest cookie stand into the most popular spot in the city. By 1 p.m., Viper's video had been viewed 50,000 times. By 2 p.m., it had broken 200,000. By 3 p.m., it was trending nationally. The video had everything the internet loved. A sympathetic protagonist, adorable child trying to help her mother, a clear villain, wealthy woman bullying said child. Dramatic confrontation. The moment Brenda turned around to see 50 bikers, and a feel-good resolution in progress, bikers helping rebuild the stand. Viper had titled it, Karen kicks over 8-year-old's cookie stand, doesn't see the 50 bikers behind her. The comments section was a thing of beauty. Those bikers showed more restraint than I would have. Respect. The way he just stood there eating his cookie while staring her down. Legend. I'm crying at the part where he asks about her mom's locket. Can we start a GoFundMe for this kid? I'll donate right now. Actually, the bikers set up a system where you can Venmo the club and they're buying cookies from her. Every dollar goes to the locket fund. That last comment was from Viper himself, who'd set up a QR code that directed to the club's payment system with a note. All donations will be used to purchase cookies from Lily at $2 per bag, 6 cookies. We're baking fresh batches hourly. By 2:30 p.m., they'd received $4,000 in Venmo donations. We're going to need a lot more cookies, Bear observed. The coffee shop's kitchen had become a cookie factory. Tiny, who it turned out had worked in his family's bakery before joining the club, was running the operation with professional efficiency. Thunder and Brooklyn were on mixing duty. 2 baristas had volunteered to help, so impressed by what was happening that they clocked out and were working for free. We're making 600 cookies an hour, Tiny reported. Got enough ingredients for maybe 2,000 total. After that, we'll need to buy more. Buy more, Bear said. We'll figure it out. Back at the stand, Lily was overwhelmed. A line had formed, a real line of regular people, not just bikers. Mothers with children, elderly couples, teenagers who'd seen the video. A man in a business suit who said he'd driven 20 minutes after seeing it on Twitter. I just think what you're doing is wonderful, said a woman who bought 5 bags. My daughter's your age. If anyone ever treated her like that woman treated you, I'd lose my mind. A local news crew showed up at 3 p.m. We're here with Lily Evans, the 8-year-old entrepreneur whose cookie stand was attacked this morning by a local HOA president. The reporter said into the camera. Lily, how do you feel about all this support? Lily, who was suddenly on camera in front of what looked like half the city, froze. Bear stepped in smoothly. She feels grateful, he said, his massive hand resting gently on Lily's shoulder. But she's also a kid who's been through a lot today. Maybe we keep this brief. The reporter, to her credit, nodded. Of course. Can you tell us what happened? Bear gave a concise, factual account. No embellishment. No drama. Just the truth. And what happens now? The reporter asked. Now, Bear said, we make sure this little girl gets her mama's locket back. And we make sure everyone knows that this community, the real community, not the HOA, stands up for kids who are trying to do good in the world. The interview made the 5 p.m. news, and the 6 p.m. news, and the national cable news cycle at 7 p.m. By 4 p.m., they'd sold over 1,000 bags of cookies. The math was getting complicated, but Viper was tracking it all on a spreadsheet. We've exceeded the locket fund goal by about $3,000, he reported. What do we do with the excess? Bear looked at Lily. Your call, sweetheart. It's your business. Lily thought carefully. Could we help other kids? Like, kids whose moms had to sell their stuff too. Bear felt his heart might actually burst. Yeah, kid. Yeah, we can do that. At 5 p.m., Sarah Evans, Lily's mother, arrived at the scene, still in her diner uniform, having received approximately 30 phone calls, texts, and messages telling her to get to the corner of Maple and Oak immediately. She pushed through the crowd, panic evident on her face, and stopped dead when she saw her daughter. Lily was sitting at a professional-looking table, surrounded by bikers the size of refrigerators, selling cookies to a line of customers that stretched around the block. Lily Marie Evans. Sarah's voice cut through the noise. Lily looked up, her face a mixture of guilt and excitement. Hi, Mama. Sarah marched up to the table. Bear straightened to his full height, ready to explain, but Sarah wasn't looking at him. She was looking at her daughter. You were supposed to be at the library, Sarah said, her voice shaking. I know, Mama. I'm sorry. I wanted to. Sarah's eyes fell on the cash box, then on the crowd, then on the news camera, then, finally, on Bear. Who are you? She demanded. Jackson Tate, ma'am. President of Iron Saints Motorcycle Club. Your daughter's been running a very successful business today, and we've been providing security and logistical support. Security and... Sarah's brain was clearly struggling to process this. Someone called me and said my daughter was assaulted. They said a woman kicked over her table. They said, it's all on video, ma'am. Viper said gently, holding out his phone. And the police were already here. Your daughter's fine. Better than fine. Sarah watched the video. Bear saw her face go through a journey. Confusion, horror, rage at Brenda, shock at the biker's appearance, wonder at their restraint. When it finished, she looked at Lily. Baby, why didn't you tell me what you were doing? Because I wanted it to be a surprise, Lily whispered. For your birthday. I wanted to get Grandma's locket back. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Tears started streaming down her face. Oh, baby. Oh, sweet girl. You didn't have to. But I wanted to, Lily said. You work so hard, Mama. You're so tired all the time. And I heard you crying about the locket, and I just thought. Sarah pulled her daughter into a crushing hug, both of them crying now. Bear discreetly signaled to his club to give them space. The crowd seemed to understand too, stepping back, creating a bubble of privacy around mother and daughter. After a long moment, Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes. She looked at Bear. Thank you, she said simply. I don't know what you did, exactly, but thank you. Your daughter did it all herself, ma'am, Bear said. We just made sure she stayed safe while doing it. Sarah looked at the crowd, the table, the ongoing cookie operation. How much has she made? Enough for the locket, Bear said. And enough to start a fund to help other kids in similar situations. Your daughter's got a business mind and a good heart. Rare combination. Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. She gets that from her grandmother. At 6 p.m., they closed the stand. They'd sold over 2,000 bags of cookies. The final tally was $8,347 in direct sales and donations. Bear walked Lily and Sarah to the pawn shop personally, the entire Iron Saints Club riding escort. The pawn shop owner, who'd also seen the video, had the locket waiting. "No charge," he said when Lily tried to hand him the money. "Are you kidding? Do you know how many customers I've gotten today because of this story? Keep your money, kid. The locket's yours." "But," Lily started. "No buts," the pawn shop owner insisted. "Consider it my contribution to doing the right thing." Sarah opened the locket. Inside were two faded photographs, one of Lily's grandmother as a young woman, one of Sarah as a baby. "Happy early birthday, Mama," Lily whispered. Sarah couldn't speak. She just held her daughter and cried. The story didn't end there, of course. Stories like this never really end. They ripple outward, touching lives in ways both expected and surprising. Brenda Miller's life imploded with impressive speed. The HOA held an emergency meeting and voted her out as president by a margin of 47-2. The two votes in her favor were from her sister and a neighbor who was apparently asleep during the meeting. Her attempt to sue the Iron Saints for emotional distress and harassment was dismissed by a judge who'd also seen the video. The judge's exact words: "Ma'am, you kicked a child's cookie stand." The bikers showed remarkable restraint. "Case dismissed" became a viral quote themselves. Brenda eventually moved out of Riverside Estates. Rumor had it she relocated to a gated community 3 counties over, where presumably no children were allowed to sell baked goods. Officer David Miller became an overnight hero in the biker community when his body cam footage was released, with appropriate permissions, showing his fair handling of the situation. He was invited to ride with the Iron Saints on their next charity run, which he accepted enthusiastically. The coffee shop that let the Iron Saints use their kitchen saw a 300% increase in business. They renamed one of their drinks the Cookie Queen Special and donated a portion of proceeds to Lily's newly established Grandma's Locket Fund, a nonprofit that helped families recover pawned heirlooms. But it was Lily herself who underwent the most dramatic transformation. 1 week after the incident, on Sarah's actual birthday, the Iron Saints showed up at their apartment complex with a surprise. 50 motorcycles parked in perfect formation, engines rumbling in harmony. Bear knocked on their door, holding a small package wrapped in silver paper. "Special delivery for Lily Evans," he announced when Sarah opened the door. Lily came running, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly noon on a Saturday. "What is it?" she asked, eyes wide. "Open it and see," Bear said. Inside the package was a custom-made leather vest, child-sized, soft leather, decorated with patches. On the back was embroidered Cookie Queen in flowing script. On the front was a special patch, an honorary member of the Iron Saints MC. "You're one of us now, kid," Bear said gruffly. "Honorary member. That means you've got 50 big brothers who've got your back. Anyone ever gives you trouble again, you call us." Lily put on the vest. It fit perfectly. She looked at herself in the hallway mirror, and her gap-toothed smile could have lit up the city. Can I ride with you sometime?" she asked shyly. "When you're older," Bear said. "Got to be 16 to ride passenger. But until then, you're always invited to our events. We do charity runs, toy drives, community service. Could use someone with your business skills." The Iron Saints had one more surprise. They'd brought breakfast, a massive spread from the local diner where Sarah worked. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, and of course, cookies. "Can't have a birthday party without cookies," Viper explained. They set everything up in the parking lot of the apartment complex. Other residents came out, curious about the noise. Before long, it had turned into an impromptu community breakfast. The bikers shared food, told stories, and completely transformed the perception of who they were. Mrs. Patterson from the apartment above the Evans later said, "I used to lock my door when I saw motorcycles. Now I know better. Those men have bigger hearts than most folks in suits." As the sun climbed higher and the breakfast wound down, Bear pulled Sarah aside. "Ma'am, I want to talk to you about something," he said. Sarah tensed. "If this is about Lily riding—" No, Bear interrupted. "It's about you." Viper did some research. "You're working 2 jobs, right? Hospital nights, diner days?" Sarah's defenses went up. "I make it work. We're fine." "I know you do," Bear said gently. "But you shouldn't have to. The owner of that coffee shop, the one where we bake the cookies, he's looking for a manager. Flexible hours, better pay, benefits. He saw how you handled everything that day, how you raised such a good kid despite everything. And he wants to offer you an interview. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I don't have management experience. You've been managing life as a single mom with 2 jobs, Bear said. That's more management experience than most people with fancy degrees. At least take the interview. What's it hurt? Sarah took the interview. She got the job. 6 months later, she was running the most successful coffee shop in the city, in part because it had become a tourist destination, the place where the viral cookie operation had begun. The excess money from cookie sales became the Grandma's Locket Fund, managed by Sarah with guidance from the Iron Saints nonprofit board. In its first year, the fund helped 43 families recover pawned heirlooms. Each family had their own story, their own desperate reasons for selling something precious. And each family got their treasure back, usually with a personal visit from Lily and Bear. Lily herself became something of a local celebrity. She was invited to speak at schools about entrepreneurship and perseverance. She started a small baking business, fully permitted and legal this time, with Sarah's supervision. Every Saturday, she set up at the coffee shop, with permission and proper permits, and people came from all over to buy the cookies from that viral video. She always donated 20% of profits to the Grandma's Locket Fund. On her 9th birthday, Lily received a letter from the governor, commending her entrepreneurial spirit and community service. The Iron Saints threw her a party that the entire neighborhood attended. Even Officer Miller came, bringing his own motorcycle to show Lily. But perhaps the most important change was the smallest one. Every Sunday morning, Sarah wore her grandmother's locket. Sometimes she'd open it and show Lily the pictures inside. Grandmother and mother, separated by decades but united by love and resilience. This locket, Sarah told her daughter one morning, used to represent everything I'd lost, everything I'd failed to protect. Now it represents what we built together. It represents how even when bad things happen, good people show up. How a community can come together. How one little girl's courage can change everything. Lily smiled her gap-toothed smile. The new tooth was growing in nicely, but she was in no hurry for it to come in completely. The gap made her recognizable, made her memorable. Mama, Lily asked. Yes, baby. Next year, I want to make enough to help someone else get their special thing back. Maybe 2 people. Maybe 10. Sarah pulled her daughter close. I think that can be arranged. Outside their apartment, a familiar rumble announced the arrival of Bear on his Harley. He'd started stopping by on Sunday mornings, bringing fresh bagels and coffee for Sarah, hot chocolate for Lily. It wasn't romantic. Bear was old enough to be Sarah's father, but it was family. The family you chose. The family you built. The family that showed up when someone kicked over your cookie stand, and the world seemed cruel. That was the family that mattered. The video didn't just go viral, it became a cultural moment. Within 2 weeks, Karen Kick's cookie stand had been viewed over 50 million times across all platforms. It had been covered by every major news outlet, been discussed on morning talk shows, been referenced in late-night comedy monologues. But more than that, it had sparked something. A movement. Hashtag Cookie Stand Challenge started trending. Kids across the country, inspired by Lily's story, set up their own cookie stands to raise money for causes they believed in. Parents supervised, communities supported, and local biker clubs, inspired by the Iron Saints, showed up to provide security and boost sales. In Memphis, a 10-year-old boy raised $5,000 selling cookies to fund his school's music program that had been cut due to budget constraints. The local MC showed up, bought cookies, and donated instruments. In Portland, twin girls sold cookies to raise money for the animal shelter where they volunteered. The video of 50 bikers carefully holding tiny rescue kittens while eating cookies broke the internet all over again. In Phoenix, a teenager with autism started a cookie business to fund his college education. The support he received from both the biker community and the general public was so overwhelming that he ended up with a full scholarship and a thriving business that employed other teens with special needs. The Iron Saints themselves became accidental celebrities. They were invited to speak at business schools about crisis management and community engagement. Bear gave a TEDx talk titled, Leading with Leather: What Motorcycle Clubs Can Teach Us About Community Protection. Viper started a consulting business teaching small businesses how to use social media for viral marketing. His first client was Lily's cookie operation. But with fame came scrutiny. There were critics, of course. Think pieces about whether it was appropriate for bikers to get involved with a child. Questions about the Iron Saints' background. All of which came back clean. They were exactly what they claimed to be, a legitimate non-profit riding club. There were conspiracy theorists who insisted the whole thing had been staged for publicity. Brenda herself tried this angle, but the timestamps and metadata on the videos, plus the police report, made this impossible to sustain. There were people who felt the punishment of Brenda had been too harsh, that public humiliation wasn't proportionate to kicking a cookie stand. These people were usually drowned out by the majority who felt Brenda had gotten exactly what she deserved. The Iron Saints handled all of it with their characteristic calm. They didn't engage with trolls. They didn't defend themselves against baseless accusations. They simply continued doing what they'd always done, riding, supporting their community, and protecting those who needed it. Let the work speak for itself, Bear told his club at their monthly meeting. We know who we are. The people who matter know who we are. The rest is noise. But there was one piece of fallout that did require attention, the copycats. Not the kids doing #CookieStandChallenge. Those were wholesome and encouraged. No, the problem was the people trying to stage incidents for viral fame. A woman in Ohio deliberately kicked over her nephew's lemonade stand and filmed it, hoping to recreate the viral moment. When local bikers showed up, having been secretly contacted beforehand by the woman, the whole thing fell apart. The staged nature became obvious, the backlash was severe, and child services got involved. In Texas, a man paid a child actor to pretend to cry while he defended her cookie stand from a Karen he'd also hired. The video was quickly debunked, and all parties involved faced fraud charges when it was revealed they'd been collecting donations under false pretenses. These incidents made Bear furious in a way that even Brenda's original attack hadn't. They're making a mockery of what that little girl went through, he told Viper. They're turning real pain into performance art. It's disgusting. Viper nodded. Want me to make a statement? Make it clear, Bear said. The Iron Saints will not participate in staged incidents. We will not validate fake viral attempts. And anyone we catch trying to exploit kids for clicks will be exposed and reported to authorities. The statement went viral itself. Other legitimate MCs echoed it. The copycats mostly stopped, realizing the risk wasn't worth the reward. Meanwhile, Lily's genuine story continued to inspire genuine good. A publisher approached Sarah about writing a children's book based on Lily's experience. After careful consideration and consultation with Bear about protecting Lily's privacy, Sarah agreed, with the condition that all profits go to the Grandma's Locket Fund. The book, The Cookie Stand and the Iron Hearts, was illustrated with watercolors by a local artist who'd also been at the original scene. It told Lily's story with honesty but also age-appropriate sensitivity, focusing on themes of perseverance, community, and the importance of standing up for what's right. It became a bestseller. Libraries across the country added it to their collections. Teachers used it to discuss entrepreneurship, conflict resolution, and not judging by appearances. Lily did book signings, always accompanied by Bear, who'd become her unofficial guardian uncle. At every signing, there was a line of kids wanting to meet the real Cookie Queen, and a line of parents wanting to thank Bear for showing their children what true strength looked like. One particularly memorable signing took place at a bookstore in the very neighborhood where everything had started, Riverside Estates. The new HOA president, a kind woman named Margaret who'd immediately reversed all of Brenda's most draconian rules, had invited Lily to do a signing at their community center. I want to make it clear, Margaret said in her introduction, that this community is not defined by one woman's cruelty. We're defined by how we respond to it. And we're responding by celebrating this remarkable young lady. The turnout was overwhelming. Every seat was filled, standing room only. And in the back, conspicuously present, were the Iron Saints. All 50 of them. They didn't speak. They didn't make a scene. They simply stood there, a silent reminder of what happened to those who hurt kids in this town. After the signing, an elderly woman approached Lily. She was crying. I just wanted to tell you, the woman said, that I'm Brenda's mother. The room went silent. Bear stepped closer to Lily, protective instincts on alert. I am so sorry for what my daughter did to you. The woman continued. I didn't raise her to be like that. I don't know where it went wrong. But I want you to know that she was wrong, and what you did, how you handled it with such grace. It's inspired me to be better too. Lily, with wisdom beyond her 8 years, took the woman's hand. "It's okay," she said. "People make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." The woman sobbed. The room collectively exhaled. And somewhere, in that moment, a little bit more healing happened. 1 year after the incident, on a warm summer day that echoed the heat of that fateful morning, the Iron Saints organized their biggest charity event yet, the first annual cookie ride. The concept was simple, a 100-mile ride culminating in a festival where local bakers, kids and adults, could sell their goods, with all proceeds going to various charities. The Grandma's Locket Fund was the primary beneficiary, but there were also donations designated for youth programs, domestic violence shelters, and veteran services. Over 500 motorcycles participated. Not just the Iron Saints, but clubs from across the country who'd been inspired by the story. They rode in formation, a river of chrome and leather flowing down highways, through towns, past farms, all heading toward Riverside Estates. The community center that had once been Brenda's domain was transformed into a celebration. Cookie stands lined the parking lot. Music played from a stage where local bands performed for free. Kids ran around with frosting-stained faces. Parents talked and laughed and bought more cookies than any human could reasonably eat. In the center of it all was Lily's stand, but she wasn't working alone anymore. Sarah was there, of course, helping manage inventory. But so were 5 other kids, all of them recipients of help from the Grandma's Locket Fund. There was Marcus, who'd gotten his father's Purple Heart back from a pawn shop. There was Chun, who'd recovered his grandfather's watch. There was Isabella, whose family heirloom was a handmade quilt her great-grandmother had sewn. Each of them had their own story. Each of them had been helped by Lily's example. "How does it feel?" Bear asked Lily, watching her teach one of the younger kids how to make correct change. "Good," Lily said, her new front tooth fully grown in now. She was 9, taller, more confident, but still the same kind-hearted girl who just wanted to help her mother. "It feels really good to help other people feel the way you guys made me feel." "And how's that?" Bear asked, though he knew the answer. "Safe," Lily said simply. "And like I mattered. Like what I was doing was important." Bear felt his throat tighten. "It was important, kid. It is important. Don't ever forget that." The day was perfect. Sunny but not too hot. A breeze that kept everyone comfortable. Cookie sales were brisk, with several stands selling out within the first 2 hours. At 2 p.m., there was a ceremony. Officer Miller, now a regular fixture at Iron Saints events, stood at the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention." The crowd quieted. 1 year ago today, something special happened in this community. A little girl tried to do something good, and she was met with cruelty. But she was also met with protection, with support, with love from people who prove that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them. Applause rippled through the crowd. Today, we're honoring not just Lily Evans, but all the kids who've been inspired by her example. The Cookie Stand Challenge has raised over $2 million nationwide for various charities. The Grandma's Locket Fund alone has helped 347 families recover precious heirlooms. More applause, louder this time. But we're also honoring the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club, who showed us all what real strength looks like. It's not about intimidation. It's about protection. It's not about violence. It's about standing between the vulnerable and those who would harm them. The bikers shifted uncomfortably. They weren't used to this kind of public praise. "And so," Officer Miller continued, "on behalf of the City Council, I'd like to present the Iron Saints with the Community Service Award, the first motorcycle club to ever receive this honor." Bear accepted the plaque with characteristic gruffness, but those who knew him could see he was deeply moved. "We just did what was right," he said into the microphone. "Nothing more, nothing less. And we'll keep doing it as long as we can." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. But the best moment came later, as the sun was setting and the crowd was beginning to thin. Lily walked up to Bear, holding something behind her back. "I made you something," she said shyly. Bear knelt down. "Yeah? What's that?" Lily pulled out a picture frame. Inside was a photograph from that first day, Bear standing next to her cookie stand, both of them smiling, surrounded by the other club members. Viper had captured it without either of them noticing. But it wasn't just the photo that made Bear's eyes water. It was what Lily had written on the mat, in her careful child's handwriting. "To Bear and the Iron Saints. Thank you for showing me that heroes come in all kinds of leather. Love, your Cookie Queen." Bear pulled her into a careful hug, his massive arms gentle around her small frame. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm going to put this in the clubhouse, right next to our charter. It'll remind us why we do what we do." As the sun set on that perfect day, as motorcycles began to fire up for the ride home, as families packed up their cookie stands and counted their earnings, there was a sense of completion, of coming full circle. 1 year ago, a little girl had tried to sell cookies and been met with cruelty. Today, hundreds of kids were selling cookies and being met with nothing but support. The difference was everything. And somewhere, in a gated community 3 counties away, Brenda Miller saw the news coverage of the cookie ride, saw the celebration, saw the community she'd tried so hard to protect, celebrating the very thing she'd tried to destroy. For just a moment, alone in her pristine house with its perfect lawn and its miserable silence, Brenda understood what she'd lost. Not property value, not neighborhood standards, community, connection, the chance to be part of something bigger than herself. But that moment passed, as such moments do for people who never truly learn. She closed the blinds, turned off the television, and returned to her lonely vigil of rules and regulations and rigid order. Meanwhile, back in Riverside Estates, the celebration continued into the night. Music played, children laughed, bikers traded stories, and at the center of it all, a 9-year-old girl in a leather vest served cookies and spread joy and proved that sometimes, the smallest among us can spark the biggest changes. The Iron Saints rode home that night under a canopy of stars, their engines rumbling in harmony, their hearts full, their purpose renewed. They'd saved a little girl's cookie stand. But really, she'd saved something in them too. Lily Evans stood in the parking lot of what was now officially called the Cookie Queen Community Center, the renamed Riverside Estates facility that hosted the annual Cookie Ride and served as headquarters for the Grandma's Locket Fund. At 13, she was taller, her voice had lost its childish whistle, and her gap-toothed smile had been replaced by a full set of adult teeth behind braces. But her eyes still held the same determination they'd had at 8 years old. She was about to give a speech at the opening ceremony of the 5th annual Cookie Ride. Over 2,000 motorcycles were expected this year. The event had grown beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Bear stood beside her, silver threading through his beard now, but still as imposing as ever. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little," Lily admitted. "But I've got this." "I know you do, kid. You always did." As Lily stepped up to the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces, bikers and families and kids with their own cookie stands and dreams, she thought about how one kicked table had changed everything. Not just for her, for all of them. 5 years ago, she began, her voice steady and clear. A woman kicked over my cookie stand. She thought she was enforcing rules. What she actually did was prove that sometimes, the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes. Because if she hadn't been cruel, I wouldn't have learned what kindness looks like. If she hadn't tried to stop me, I wouldn't have learned what true support feels like. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Iron Saints taught me that family isn't who you're born to. It's who stands up for you when you fall. It's who rebuilds your table when someone kicks it over. It's who shows up every single time, no matter what. In the crowd, Sarah Evans wiped away tears, her grandmother's locket gleaming at her throat. "So today isn't just about cookies," Lily continued. "It's about community. It's about protection. It's about proving that good people outnumber bad ones, and when good people stand together, nothing can stop them." She smiled. "Now let's sell some cookies." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as 2,000 motorcycle engines roared to life, filling the air with thunder and promise and the sound of family coming home. And somewhere, in that beautiful noise, was the echo of a little girl's dream that had become a movement. A reminder that courage comes in all sizes, that heroes wear all kinds of leather, and that sometimes, all it takes to change the world is one brave kid, a batch of cookies, and the willingness to stand up and try. The Iron Saints had taught her to ride hard and protect the weak. Lily Evans had taught them that the smallest voices sometimes speak the loudest truths. Together, they'd proven that justice tastes sweetest when served with chocolate chips.